Hello there, and welcome to episode 12 of my tutorial series for Dwarf Fortress. Today we're going to set up a hospital, and we're going to go over the production of soap, because these two topics are really closely related to each other, and we're going to get started this episode with the hospital setup, and then we're going to cover the soap production. Now, first thing that you will require is a chief medical dwarf. This is the person that will basically open up the opportunity to just manage your hospital staff. You can or cannot pick somebody with proficiency here. It doesn't really matter that much. We're going to pick up this guy, and that's that. As far as I know, the chief medical dwarf's main reason for existence is to make sure that somebody can manage this place. Okay, so next step, we want to set up the hospital itself. The hospital is again found in the meeting area tab, what we want to call it, and we're going to draw it like that. Here it is not as important as with other buildings that everything is included, like walls and such. It's enough if we have... Oh, oopsie, that was the wrong one. It's enough if it's looking like that. A hospital is not about wealth. So next step, we go into the plus after we've set it up and declare it a hospital. So in this screen, you can now see what kind of things are required. First up, beds, tables, traction benches, chests, and a lot of other little things. So these little things are basically the equipment and the gear for your hospital. So you're going to be assigning a doctor here, and then you can assign other people into these jobs here as well. Diagnosticians are extremely important, since without diagnosis, no treatment will follow. The other jobs, like the surgeon and the bone doctor, are, as a matter of fact, optional, because you can leave it all to the doctor. The doctor is basically a super job, which will take up any other job as well. The doctor will go for diagnosis, surgeon, and bone fixing, but all the other treatment steps are depending on the diagnosis being made. Therefore, in my opinion, this is the most important secondary job to fill, and the doctor, of course, as well. Keep in mind also that this is no permanent job for these people. They will be only partially part of their time busy in there. So you're going to need a chest for that. This is where the equipment will be stored, and we're going to use beds, which will lie in these rooms here. Yeah, well, only got one bed right now, but that's good enough. And obviously we're out of doors currently as well, but whatever. So what's also necessary here is a table and traction benches. These are necessary for the fixing of broken bones. You make them at the mechanics workshop, and they are made out of a table and a chain and mechanisms. So they are a composite out of several different items, but they are necessary to, like I said, fix broken bones. So make sure you put one into your hospital at some point. So the idea of that design here is a quite simple one. These rooms get doors, and if you ever get into the unlucky position that somebody is definitely inflicted by lycanthropy, that means he's transforming into a weir monster, you can lock them in quite easily by just barring the doors like this. You forbid them, and then they can't pass through that anymore. This is the basic idea why you want to have the rooms where the patients are being treated lockable. You don't have to do that, it's an option. Alright, traction bench goes here. Now, next step, we need orderlies. Orderlies are the people that get your wounded into the hospital, and I'd strongly recommend you to configure a nice amount of people busy for that job, because if you don't have enough orderlies, there won't be any chance that your wounded people will get into the hospital quick enough. So, a couple of words now before we move on over to soap, because soap is also something that a hospital wants. So, buckets are desired in the hospital out of one specific reason. Dwarfs that are injured can't drink alcohol anymore. They can only drink water. Therefore, before you set up a hospital, you will need a fresh water source like the one that we've set up. And soap, your fortress will work fine without soap, but soap prevents infections, and therefore we're going to go over the production process together, because it's one multi-step thing that is actually not hard to understand, but here goes. First up, you will require an ashery for this job. The ashery will require a bucket and a barrel, so this is one of the very few buildings that force you to pick up a wooden barrel. You cannot substitute it with any stone jug or anything like that. We will also require, obviously, the soap maker's workshop, and between that, we are also going to require a quern and a screw press. So you'll find the screw press here, made out of mechanisms, purely, and the quern, you make these at the stoneworker's workshop. You can order them. They are basically millstones, and you have to prepare them before you can work with that. So, soap can be made out of two different materials: animal fat and plant oil. I'm going to introduce both methods, of course, to you. We're going to start out with the animal method, which is also the most preferred one for most players, and I personally deem it also the easiest method of doing the job. So the very first thing you need is you need to slaughter an adult animal that's large enough. In our case, we're going to take a cat. Let's make cat soap. So that job will then be tasked onto the butcher's shop. You can also assign it manually as soon as you have ordered it to be butchered. Just a second, what went wrong here? Did it get assigned to a different butcher? Yeah, so it did get butchered up here. What we want is the fat. The fat is being automatically rendered at the kitchen into tallow. So you will also notice that this job is automatically assigned into the kitchen. Just like many other jobs, this is an automatic thing that that eases up your business, basically. Here we go. You now monitor exactly this process until it's done. So, oh, they didn't stop their process here. So, the cat tallow. This is the important step. You go into the labor menu, get towards the kitchen, and you forbid the tallow to be cooked with, because otherwise your kitchen will instantaneously hog that stuff and give you nothing back. So now we have tallow. That's one basic ingredient for the soap. We're going to need another thing though before we can make soap, and that's lye. So we're going to go for that process. So to make lye, we need the ashery, but the ashery cannot make lye without ash. So let's get started with that by tasking the wood furnace that you should have somewhere in your fortress with making ash. This process merely burns a piece of wood into a pile of ash, nothing more, but we'll need that. Lye making requires a bucket, so you better prepare that beforehand as well. There we go. A log is being carried here. And now we'll wait for the ash to be processed. And that will go then to the ashery. Ash is an interesting stuff. It is a kind of a bar and will be used later also for the clay industry. But for now, we cannot work with that yet. We are going to go to make lye. So here, a bucket and, if I remember correctly, water. Not sure about the water though. Ash and bucket will be transformed into lye. But here, it didn't happen because we don't happen to have an empty bucket. So this is something which can happen to your industries here quite quickly, that you don't have enough buckets, and it is a typical culprit when things don't work out as you want them to in your fortress. Here we're going to make sure that this bucket, you see there, it's already claimed. Can't just forbid it and unforbid it real quickly, and then it's open for another task. We open this up here and unpause, and now the job gets done. If the bucket in question is marked like that, the job will get cancelled. So it's a little trick. Soap process or soap making is actually quite easy once you are past those little bumps that I'm going over here, and I hope it'll help you out. So that's that. We now have a bucket full of lye. We're going to go and make ourselves another piece of ash here right away, because we're going to need the lye again for the other method of soap making. And now, well, let's see, the cat tallow needs to be open for business as well, as you see here. And now we can make soap from tallow. And that's the first step. So, to make soap from other materials, I'm going to continue here right away, we're going to use now some oily stuff. So to do so, you go on over to the cairn and you mill seeds and nuts to paste. We're going to go over to the crafts real quick and craft ourselves a rock jug, which will be what we need to contain the oil in later. So the jug is also necessary. You can make these obviously out of different materials. So here what's important to note, we're milling rocknut. Rocknut is the seed of the quarry bush. So with this method, you destroy a seed. But if your industries are well developed, that's not really a big problem, because at some point you will have way more seeds than you possibly know where to put them. Okay, that rocknut paste goes on over into the screw press. And now we gotta wait for the container. Let's see. The jug hasn't been made. Here you see, so that screw press requires the rock jug, because at that point the slurry will be transformed into oil. Here again, make sure that these things are not to be processed by the kitchen. The kitchen is a real nasty bummer and tends to hog all manner of materials that you want to process somewhere else. It's a real pain, and I really hope that in the future we get the opportunity to configure our kitchens without the goods present, because right now the biggest issue is that you cannot configure the kitchen to work with things that are not in your position yet. So here's the jug that we require. And now next step, we should make lye here, totally, but next step, we're pressing liquid from paste. That's the next thing to do. That transforms the rocknut paste over here into a nice little jug of oil. And there goes. So we have now the bucket of lye again, which is a necessity for that process. Doesn't work without. And this here, we have now also press cake, which can be processed. I don't know if it can be cooked or anything. Let's check. So here again, the rocknut oil, forbidden from cooking. It's the same procedure everywhere. You don't want these things to be spent somewhere else. Okay, last step now, we go on over and make soap from oil. So the soap industry is something you won't be usually automating. I mean, by now we have seen how work orders function, and I'm pretty sure that you don't need any further instructions about how to set up work orders for that. Here are a couple of thoughts though. The hospital will not use up the soap for a long time. Each bar of soap contains, I don't know, hundreds or even thousands of applications before it runs out. So that stuff is very long lasting. And many players, I've heard, even just craft one of these things to get the hospital staffed out, and then they never touch soap making again. I'll leave it up to you. One last thing though before I leave, which is a really fun thing about soap. If you store soap somewhere next to a body of water, so if there's some water right next to that stockpile, the dwarves will pick up the soap and use it while washing themselves. So you will find soap in the bars menu, and here it goes. So this is a little thing where you can use the soap for something else, but apart from that, I really only know these two purposes for soap. Alright, so now you know how to set up a hospital and how to make soap. And that's all you need to know for these things, and I hope that was helpful for you. So leave me your comments down below, leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing, of course. In the description box below, you will find lots of other links towards my Dwarf Fortress tutorials, and as usual, a big thanks to the supporters, and check out Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee. They are the topmost links in the description box if you want to join on in. Either way, thanks for watching this video until the end. I really appreciate you hanging out, and next episode we're going to build a library together. See you there, and have a good time.